We have to drill down to the core issue and stay there and focus on it like a damn laser. And the core issue is the denial of sex, the denial of that there are two sexes, male and female, that exist and that there are differences. That's what they want to do away with. And that impacts all of us. That especially impacts lesbian, gays, and bisexuals because our sexuality is same-sex attraction. Hello and welcome to another LGBA USA Weekly News Roundup. Today we will be covering the following stories. Kentucky has passed a ban on conversion therapy for youth. Women stand up to trans activists in New York City school board meeting. Joe Biden makes history with 12th Senate confirmed LGBTQ+ judge. And companies are refusing to participate in LGBTQ+ rights report card. Up first, we have Joss with the Joe Biden judge confirmation. Joss.
Thanks, Carol. So the Biden administration made history after Mary Kay Costello was confirmed as the 12th LGBTQ federal judge to be confirmed by the Senate. Previously, the Obama administration had 11 confirmed out judges. The Clinton administration had 1 and Trump had 2. It's always exciting to see headlines about LGBTQ+ representation, but what that means these days is that we have to become internet sleuths. Which acronym does Judge Costello represent? In this case, it seems Judge Costello is a lesbian or bisexual since she referenced her wife in the opening address of her judicial nomination speech. In fact, her wife was the 4th person she mentioned in her address after President Biden and the 2 senators who recommended her for confirmation, Bob Casey and John Fetterman. But that reality is not mentioned anywhere in the Advocate's article, which is where I found the story, about her confirmation. Instead, we're left guessing what LGBTQ+ means for Judge Costello, and in that process, the reality of lesbian, gay, and bisexual lives and experiences are lost to an acronym and an ideology that means absolutely nothing because it includes everything.
Kentucky has passed a ban on conversion therapy for youth. Wednesday, Kentucky Democratic Governor Andy Beshear signed an executive order banning conversion therapy on minors. The measure prohibits minors from being subjected to conversion therapy and prevents state or federal funds from being used for such therapies. Of course, the devil is in the details here. As with all these recent conversion therapy bans, gender identity is included along with sexual orientation. In my opinion, these bans have little to do with protecting gay and lesbian youth, and everything to do with ensuring that kids are medically transitioned with no questions being asked. As it states in the executive order signed by Kentucky's governor, quote, conversion therapy means any practice, treatment, or intervention that seeks or purports to change an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity, including efforts to change behaviors or gender expressions or to eliminate or reduce sexual or romantic attractions or feelings toward individuals of the same gender. Dr. Elizabeth Fedek speaks out at the CECD2 board meeting in favor of including women and girls in decisions that involve them. As reported in a previous news roundup, a New York City school board is facing a huge amount of backlash from trans activists for their desire to include women and girls in the decision-making process of schools' gender policies. New York City's District 2, Manhattan's largest, voted in favor of Resolution 248 in an 8-3 vote in March of this year. The resolution called for a committee to be formed to investigate if inclusion of males into girls' sports and spaces is something that is safe or productive for the girls who go to District 2 schools. As Councilmember Maud Mirren said, quote, it's not asking for anything other than dialogue, end quote. But the board has been under attack ever since, with calls to rescind the resolution because it's quote, anti-trans. This week, another public meeting was held where both trans activists and feminist activists spoke on the resolution. Dr. Elizabeth Fedek, a primary organizer for the group Women NYC, spoke out in favor of the resolution. At the beginning of her speech, she says, quote, feminism requires unimpeachable bravery in the face of male power, end quote. And right at that moment, a group of men, some who identified as women, stood up and turned their backs on her. In my opinion, this is a moment of pure honesty from trans activists, a moment where they tell on themselves and show their hatred of women and girls. Dr. Fedek goes on to say that she is here to remind us what male power looks like. And if you want to be inclusive, you must include women and girls as well. From their post on X, they wrote, quote, "This was in protest to yet another attempt to rescind Resolution 248, which asked to simply include women and girls as stakeholders in reviewing the 2019 gender guidelines. All these people are here to protest women's rights and women's and girls' inclusion in education," end quote. I reached out to Roar Women on X to ask where the resolution stands now and why these meetings are still occurring. They wrote me back, quote, "Resolution 259, the second resolution trying to rescind 248, did not pass. The TRAs have said they're going to derail every CECD2 meeting until the committee rescinds Resolution 248. They won't. There will be more attempts. 4 members are totally captured," end quote. Dr. Elizabeth Fedek's speech was amazing, and I encourage everyone to go watch the video for themselves and support these women. We will provide links to their X account and the speech.
You want to be on the right side of history, you need to drop this astroturfed fake civil rights movement as soon as possible. Because right now it looks like you're willing to destroy the single-sex spaces half the population needs to comfortably attend school in favor of a eugenics project. Either the word woman means something or it means nothing. Do not rescind Resolution 248.
Last story here. Some companies are refusing to participate in LGBTQ rights report card after facing backlash. 2 decades ago, the Human Rights Campaign began its report card, named the Corporate Equality Index. This was done to encourage companies to not discriminate based on people's sexuality or identity. The initial report card was very basic in its rating system, focusing on equality. Just 13 companies received a perfect score during that time. As of last year, 545 companies received a perfect score, even though the criteria for this perfect score has ballooned in the last decade. So it's happening. Why are companies like Lowe's, Harley-Davidson, and Ford refusing to participate in the Equality Index now? The pushback is no doubt part of a larger movement, mostly by conservatives, to do away with affirmative action policies and programs. A Supreme Court decision last year declared that race-based affirmative action programs in college administration was unconstitutional. According to the Associated Press, the pressure to put on companies to not participate in the Equality Index is an extension of this affirmative action pushback. And while some of that may be true, however, we know that there might be more to it than that. The demands of trans activists on society to bend reality to their will has caused a lot of upheaval, and it seems perhaps people are getting fed up with it. For example, in 2004, the index emphasized providing comprehensive benefits to domestic partners. In 2019, it specified that supplier diversity programs, which encourage companies to work with minority-owned and veteran-owned businesses, must include LGBTQ plus suppliers. And by 2022, the index said employers should offer same-sex spouses and domestic partners the same benefits as other couples for in vitro fertilization and adoption, and that employers must create gender transition guidelines, among other changes. It's unfortunate to see this pushback because same-sex attracted people are also included in this. What we wanted 2 decades ago was equality. What we see HRC demanding now is special treatment, most of which is for trans-identified people, not same-sex attracted people. So what do you think about that, Joss?
I'm glad to see pushback. It's a long past time, especially the more extensive, maybe, is the way to put it.
For me, I read this and I go, part of me is like, good, because stuff has gone way too far. Like we know it's just gone way too far in the other direction of, especially with trans rights advocates and all that kind of stuff, where it's just wanting just bonker stuff, like, men who think they're women to go into women's restrooms, and covering transition surgeries, and just, using pronouns and all this, just people don't like that stuff. It's way out there. But unfortunately, gays and lesbians are also included in this acronym. And so our rights seem to go along with that. And I do get worried about the backlash, because my experience has been that most people don't draw the distinction between homosexuals and bisexuals and trans identification. They think they don't really even understand the difference. Most people don't. They just include it all together, which fair enough, because this has been included. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, how do we keep the equality there, you know?
Yeah, it has gotten to the point now where it's almost harmful in many ways to LGBT people trying to seek equality under any of these types of guidelines or affirmative action type programs because of TQIA. So recently, I did some internet sleuthing on a company that was featured on Walmart's Pride Month campaign. And it's a heterosexual couple who had the male partner transitioned. So now they are LGBTQ. And as soon as that happened, the flip switched. And now this person is on these diversity things and featured on Walmart, and the company blows up, and it's this whole big thing. But this is just a heterosexual couple. So when these things happen, it takes the place of lesbian, gay, and bi owned businesses. So how is that it doesn't advance our cause. It doesn't advance our people or any of these companies. And unfortunately, I noticed also companies that would be lesbian owned, t-shirt company, like apparel, whatever, do not do as well as the companies that are trans forward and have the 85 different diversity flags for sexual orientations. Like, the market is so heavily geared towards this. It really feels like LGBT is a minority of this purported minority. Like we get lost. Like, we are lost in the acronym.
Yeah. Well, because they're two different things. You can't. They shouldn't have been put together in the first place.
They never should have. They are
one is sexual orientation, and the other is an identity. You know,
identities. Identity.
Well, yeah.
It's so much. There's so. Yeah, we went from Gen X saying like, "Don't put me in a box," to this being like, "Here's 85 boxes I can jump into."
No labels, bro. Wait,
yeah.
I'll take a label. Actually, I'll take 5 labels.
Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like we probably saw this coming.
Yeah.
But it's just like HRC making the pie higher in terms of adding in T and the Q and IA and A.
And then just the demands that they come up with. Like, I didn't dive extensively into the demands, but I don't think I need to. I've been around long enough, I've seen it enough to know the demands are wacko. Like, you know, the pronoun thing especially has been a huge push that they've done.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a total disconnect from the reality of the world and what your average American is like, or actually your average person, generally speaking, even outside of the United States, is like. I mean, they're just people raising kids, going to work. You know, they don't understand any of this. And then you come in here and you tell them to do this crazy, wacky stuff like, you know, call a dude she because he has special feelings. No one's going to buy that, you know. But I do think there is some truth to that there is a conservative back push with affirmative action, you know, with, you know, making sure that there's equality in the workplace and stuff like that. We do see a shift there. There is that, but like it's reported, I don't think that's the whole story. Like, I'm not going to say that's not some of it, because I think it is, but I also think there's just the whole point of people just getting fed up with too much.
Yeah.
And also, you went after their kids. Don't go after the kids. That's always you don't do that.
Yeah, no, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head. That normal people, normal everyday people, and including LGBT people, don't realize what's happening. And it's not until they make a tiny misstep. And maybe this is how this whole backlash has really started, because we've had so much allyship on the left and the right and then one well-intentioned person says one little thing, misgender somebody, says one little thing, has like some little faux pas, whatever, and then is demonized or attacked or attempted to be canceled. And that was an ally. That was their own ally. So the TQIA doesn't just hurt LGBT people, but they hurt themselves because they are so quick to be victims and to try to cancel other people. It's odd to see people who have so much power claim to have none.
Yeah. Right.
And to attack people at the drop of a hat.
The other thing to keep in mind is there is only so much you can dictate society do, right? The only way that you can make sure that equality happens is in the law. You can't change people's attitudes necessarily by demanding they change. You can't legislate people change their attitudes. And I think that's another misstep that I think the gay rights movement started to do later on. But then when the trans rights came in there, when the trans I don't want to call it rights.
Focus, like the focus to trans.
When the trans focus came in there and it all became about trans identities, then it really started to be about policing people, not equality under the law. It became about trying to force people to believe a certain way and talk a certain way. And you can't do that. Like, that's impossible to do. The way to get equality is under the law. The rest just takes work.
The big problem with that, though, is that because HRC and GLAAD and these other orgs have a seat at the table with legislators, they are trying to legislate that. And that's how we see the conflation of sex and gender, where they've tried to do that with the Equality Act and the Violence Against Women and Girls Act. Like, they are actively trying to conflate sex and gender so they can legislate that.
Well, yeah, obviously that's a huge issue. I mean, I guess I was just saying, like, basically you can't change hearts and minds by law. Law doesn't change hearts and minds.
No, I agree with you. And I think that's it. May be part of that snowball and that backlash is now we're seeing these laws incrementally come into local communities and attempts at the federal level, and especially with Title IX and the changes to sports. Now people are starting to see, wait a minute, this affects my 12-year-old softball team. This affects the volleyball team. And these little things where they're like, oh, this isn't a problem. This isn't happening. No, in small communities in XYZville, America, it's happening. And there is a real tangible effect. And now people are like, that's enough.
And what's the core issue? We have to drill down to the core issue and stay there and focus on it like a damn laser. And the core issue is the denial of sex, the denial of that there are two sexes, male and female, that exist, and that there are differences. That's what they want to do away with. And that impacts all of us. That especially impacts lesbian, gays, and bisexuals, because our sexuality is same-sex attraction.
Yes. Couldn't have said it better.
And on that note, thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.